The butcher? In the Midnight Meat Train, we follow Leon, a photographer obsessed with capturing the dark side of the city. While investigating disappearances in the subway, he crosses paths with Mahogany, a strange, silent man with a very specific routine inside the night trains. At first, everything points to just another serial killer, but the movie holds a twist that completely changes the game. When Leon finally confronts Mahogany inside the train, things spiral out of control and they end up in a secret station hidden deep beneath the city. In a desperate and violent fight, Leon manages to overpower and kill the butcher. But then comes the twist. Mahogany wasn't just a killer, he was a caretaker of something much bigger. The train conductor shows up and explains everything as casually as possible, like it's just another work shift. The subway exists in part to feed ancient and hungry creatures that have been living hidden down there for centuries. And at that point, there's no heroism that can save anyone. The creatures appear, take everything, including Leon's girlfriend, and there is no escape. The choice is simple. Either someone continues the job, or those things rise to the surface. And so Leon himself becomes part of the system, loses his voice, and takes Mahogany's place, now dressed the same and repeating the cycle. The perfect father. In Hellfest, we follow Natalie and her friends enjoying a horror theme park full of actors, masks, and jump scares. In the middle of the fun, a masked man shows up who isn't there to act. He starts chasing the group, blending in perfectly with the attractions, and that's the movie's strongest point. Everything happens in public, surrounded by people, and no one realizes something is actually wrong. To everyone around, it just looks like part of the show. In the end, the protagonist Natalie manages to fight back. After a tense chase, she confronts the killer and hits him, creating a chance to escape. The police arrive right after, but of course, it's already too late. The guy simply disappears in the middle of the chaos like he was never there. Classic, right? But the movie still has one final blow. The camera cuts to a normal neighborhood. Standard house, organized garage, nothing out of place. And then comes the part that really unsettles you. The killer gets home, takes off his mask, and stores it along with other trophies, several keepsakes from victims, including a photo of Natalie's group. In other words, it wasn't the first time. And then the most uncomfortable twist, he walks into the house and a little girl appears, happy, calling him dad. He hugs his daughter like he's the most normal guy in the world.
You're home!
The Empty Moon. In Honeymoon, Bee and Paul go to spend their honeymoon in an isolated cabin, but on the very first night, she is found walking alone in the woods, completely out of it. From that moment on, nothing goes back to normal. Bee changes quickly. She forgets simple things, acts cold, distant, like she's disconnected. Paul tries to ignore it, but he can't when things become physical. In one of the most tense scenes, he discovers that there's something inside her and helps remove a strange creature like a worm. At that point, there's no doubt left. It's not just strange behavior, there's something much bigger behind it. Even so, removing it doesn't fix anything. Bee is no longer the same person. She starts talking about them, says they're coming back, and that she needs to go to the forest. It doesn't feel like a choice. It feels programmed. And when Paul tries to stop her, everything gets worse. She reacts violently as if she's being controlled, completely turns against him, and takes control of the situation. The ending is tragic. Bee takes Paul to the lake and eliminates any chance of him stopping what's coming. The final scene is silent and unsettling. She walks alone into the forest toward mysterious lights, as if she's being called back, and we understand. Whatever took her never intended to give her back. The final switch. In Jezebel, we follow Jessie, a young woman who returns to her father's house after an accident and starts finding old tapes left by her mother. But along with that, visions begin to appear in a strange presence that seems connected to the past of that house. For most of the movie, Jessie believes she is being haunted by a spirit, a mysterious girl who appears in reflections, recordings, and in the dark corners of the house. Everything points to a classic haunting, but the truth is much heavier. Little by little, she discovers that her own family's story is built on lies. Her mother had an affair, got pregnant, and the baby who was the real Jezebel was killed by Jessie's father right after being born. To hide everything, he simply took another child and raised her as if she were his daughter. In other words, the protagonist was never who she thought she was. At the climax, the past comes back. The spirit of the real Jezebel, along with her biological father, enters the scene through rituals connected to voodoo. Jessie is taken to a lake, and that's where the point of no return happens. Under the water, the switch takes place. The protagonist's soul is trapped at the bottom, while the real Jezebel takes over her body. And the movie ends with a simple but heavy detail. When she is rescued and called by name, the response comes cold. She is no longer Jessie.
It's not wrong.
Is Jezebel.
The eternal curse. In The Woman in Black, we follow Arthur Kipps, a lawyer who goes to an isolated house to deal with inheritance matters, and ends up discovering a presence that simply won't leave anyone alone. In the movie, Arthur believes he has found the solution. He discovers that the entity, Janet Humphrey, lost her own child in a tragic way, so he decides to recover the child's body and bury him with her. In his mind, that would finally bring peace to the spirit. And for a moment, it seems like it works, that mission accomplished vibe, you know? But the movie pulls the rug out hard. At the train station, already leaving with his son Joseph, everything falls apart in seconds. ends. The boy is drawn onto the tracks by the woman in black, as if hypnotized. Arthur tries to save him, of course, but there's no time. Both of them end up being hit. And here comes that strange contrast. Instead of just a tragic ending, the movie delivers an emotional reward. Arthur sees his deceased wife, and the three reunite in the afterlife like a complete family again. Beautiful, until you remember that no one actually escaped, because the final image destroys any hope. The woman in black is still there, watching. In other words, nothing was resolved. In Susan Hill's original book, the ending is even more cruel. Arthur survives for years thinking everything is over, until he loses his son suddenly after seeing the entity again. The wrong button. In Drag Me to Hell, Christine is a bank employee who makes a cold decision to try to grow in her career and ends up cursed by a mysterious old woman. From that point on, she spends the entire movie trying to break the curse before something much worse happens, and she even thinks she succeeded. The rule is simple: pass the cursed object to someone else. So Christine goes to the cemetery and does exactly that. She returns the coat button to the body of the woman who cast the curse. Done. Mission accomplished. She leaves there relieved, light, almost celebrating, and the movie makes you believe it along with her. But then comes the big twist. At the train station, already ready to move on with her life with her boyfriend, he hands her an envelope that she had left in his car. And guess what? Inside is the cursed button. In other words, she used the wrong object at the cemetery. Everything she did was for nothing. Panic hits instantly, and the movie doesn't give time to react. In seconds, the ground starts to give way. Something rises from below, and there's no escape. The curse was never broken. Christine tries to hold on, but she is violently pulled downward, straight into hell, while her boyfriend watches without being able to do anything. A dry, cruel ending with no chance of redemption. The perfect doll. In Dead Silence, Jamie returns to his hometown after a mysterious death and ends up getting involved with the legend of Mary Shaw, a ventriloquist who, according to the story, kills anyone who screams when they see her. The rule is simple: you see her, don't scream, or you're done. Throughout the movie, everything leads Jamie to believe that his father, Edward, is still alive and trying to help. But when he finally gets home, the twist comes and changes everything. Edward is not alive at all. He has been dead for a long time. And what is there is basically a life-sized doll, a human puppet, completely manipulated, and it doesn't stop there. The stepmother, Ella, who seemed like just a strange figure the whole time, is revealed as the main piece of the game. She is Mary Shaw's perfect creation. While Jamie thought he was discovering the truth, he was already being led straight into the trap. When everything is revealed, there's no holding it in. Jamie goes into shock, faces Ella/Mary Shaw, and does exactly what he shouldn't. He screams. And then the movie doesn't hesitate. The rule is fulfilled instantly. Mary Shaw appears and ends his story right there, completing her revenge against the family. To close it out, there's still that unsettling detail, an album showing that all the victims became dolls in her collection, including Jamie himself. The Cursed video. In Truth or Dare, everything starts as a game between friends, until it turns into a deadly game where an entity forces each person to choose between truth or dare, and there's no refusing. Anyone who tries to escape pays the price. In the end, the protagonists Olivia and Marky come close to solving everything. The plan was simple: trap the demon Calyx again and end the game, but everything goes wrong. Lucas, their last ally, is forced to choose Dare, and the result is fatal. Without him, without Carter, the group is over, and that means one thing: they are next. That's when the heaviest decision of the movie comes. Olivia realizes there's no way to win, only to delay it. So she does something that completely changes the scale of the story. Using her YouTube channel, she records a video explaining the rules of the game and ends it with the question.
I'm so sorry, but I have to ask you, truth or dare?
Just like that. And it works, because anyone who receives the question automatically enters the game. In other words, thousands, maybe millions of people are now part of the curse. The demon gains a massive line of new players, and Olivia and Marky's turn gets pushed far ahead. They survive, but in the worst possible way. This ending divides a lot of people. Some think it's brilliant for taking the horror to a global level, while others see it as one of the most selfish endings ever made. Basically, they save themselves by condemning the entire world. The final smile. In Smile, we follow Rose, a psychiatrist who starts seeing patients die in bizarre ways, always with that strange smile on their faces. Soon she realizes it's not a coincidence, it's an entity that passes from person to person through trauma. In the end, Rose decides to face it head on. She goes alone to her childhood home, believing that with no one around, the curse cycle will end there. And for a moment, it seems like it worked. She faces the entity, relives her trauma, and wins, even setting the creature on fire. That classic feeling of overcoming it. But it's all a lie. The entity never lost control. All of that was an illusion. Rose is still trapped in the game, with no way out. And then comes the real horror. The creature finally reveals its true form, something gigantic, deformed, with a grotesque smile, and simply takes over her body. At that point, it's over. Her ex-boyfriend, Joel, arrives at the house at the worst possible moment. He witnesses everything. Rose, already possessed, performs the entity's final act. She takes her own life in a traumatic way with that smile on her face. And just like that, the cycle continues. the final sacrifice. In The Wicker Man, we follow Sergeant Howie, a deeply religious police officer who goes to an isolated island to investigate the disappearance of a girl. But from the beginning, the place already feels strange. The residents have bizarre customs, follow pagan rituals, and simply do not take the investigation seriously. Howie insists. He follows every lead, confronts the locals, tries to maintain control of the situation. But the further he goes, the more everything feels staged. And that's exactly it. At the end comes the reveal. There was never a real investigation. Everything was planned to bring him there because he is the perfect sacrifice. The residents needed someone with specific traits to please their entities and restore the crops. Someone who came of their own will, who represents the law, who is religious, and who still holds stricter values. In other words, Howie fits everything. With no way out, he is taken to the giant wicker structure, the famous Wicker Man. Inside, along with animals, he finally understands that he never had control over anything. Meanwhile, the villagers around him begin to sing, celebrate, as if it were a festival. And that's exactly the worst part. For them, there is nothing wrong. The structure is set on fire, and Howie tries to resist the only way he can, praying, screaming, refusing to accept it. But the movie offers no escape. He is not saved. There is no last-minute interruption. This ending became so iconic because it completely subverts expectations. The protagonist not only loses, but realizes he was doomed from the very beginning. The final baby. In Rosemary's Baby, we follow Rosemary, a pregnant woman who begins to suspect that something is very wrong with her neighbors, and even with her own husband. Her pregnancy is strange, painful, and everything around her feels off. In the end, all the pieces come together in a brutal way. Rosemary discovers she was never paranoid. Her husband, Guy, made a deal with a cult led by the neighbors, trading his own career success for her participation in a ritual. And the result of that is that the child she carried is not human. It is the child of the devil himself. Determined to understand everything, Rosemary enters the neighbor's apartment armed, ready to confront whoever is there. But when she finds the cradle, the movie holds back the impact. We never see the baby directly, only her reaction. And that says everything. The shock is immediate. Her eyes make it clear that it is not something normal. And then comes the most uncomfortable moment. Instead of destroying everything or trying to escape, Rosemary begins to give in. The cult members don't pressure her with violence. They convince her. They say the child needs a mother, and little by little her maternal instinct takes over. The movie ends with her rocking the cradle, taking care of the baby, accepting it. The fatal belief. In The Skeleton Key, Caroline is a caregiver who goes to work in an isolated house, taking care of a debilitated elderly man. But the place has a strange history involving hoodoo practices, and the more she investigates, the more it feels like something is wrong. The big twist of the movie is the rule of the magic. It only works if you believe in it, and Caroline spends the entire movie doubting it, until the moment she starts using the rituals to try to save Ben, the elderly man she was caring for. It seems like a smart move, but in reality, it is exactly what the villains wanted from the beginning. Because yes, there were villains hidden there the whole time. Violet, the woman of the house, and Ben's wife, and the lawyer Luke are not who they seem. They are actually Cecile and Justify, two hoodoo practitioners who were killed decades ago, but never left. Since then, they have been switching bodies to stay alive, and Caroline walks straight into the trap. At the climax, when she finally tries to use the ritual to stop everything, it is already too late. Her belief activates the spell, and the switch happens. Cecile takes over Caroline's young body, while the real Caroline is trapped in Violet's old and fragile body, unable to move or speak. The ending is cold. Ambulances arrive taking the elderly, who are actually the victims trapped in the wrong bodies. Meanwhile, Caroline and Luke, now young and free, watch everything calmly. The movie drops clues the entire time about this rule of belief, but in such a subtle way that many people only notice on a rewatch. Evil returns. In Terrifier, everything revolves around Art the Clown, a completely unpredictable figure who turns an ordinary night into a nightmare. The story follows Victoria trying to survive while he eliminates anyone who crosses his path. In the end, the chase reaches its limit inside a warehouse. Victoria is already at her physical and mental limit, and Art doesn't slow down. He uses the environment, surprises her, and makes it clear he's not playing around. The turning point comes when Art runs her over with a truck. With Victoria lying on the ground, defenseless, he starts biting and devouring her face. It's a level of cruelty that goes beyond the ordinary. But the strangest moment comes when the police finally arrive. Unlike other killers, Art doesn't try to escape. He simply chooses not to be captured. In front of the officers, he takes his own life. No, no, no! It seems like the end, but it's not. His body is taken to the morgue, standard procedure, but the movie still has one last card. During the body preparation, something happens. With no direct explanation, no warning, Art simply comes back, as if that had never been the end. He gets up, kills the coroner, and disappears into the night again. And Victoria? She survives, but with her face severely disfigured and completely destroyed on the inside. The movie reveals this in a disturbing way. Throughout the entire time, we see present-day scenes of a woman with her face hidden being interviewed on a TV show. go. At the end, the camera confirms what we already suspected. It's Victoria. This ending completely changes the tone of the movie. Up until then, it seemed like just a raw slasher, but this twist opens the door to the supernatural side that becomes the foundation of the sequels. If you enjoyed this video, you'll also like the first part we made about horror movies where evil wins in the end. Click on the screen and watch it. I'll see you there.